Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to more Metroid, Super Metroid. This is me, TRN. Hello. We are going to do some. We're going to do the wrecked ship today. It's gonna be awesome. First off, before we start off, you remember last time when we used the speed boost to go through there. This time we are actually going back to the path above the elevator, and we're gonna head towards the far eastern side of Criteria. Now the wrecked ship is actually a really cool part, an interesting part of Super Metroid. It's probably my favorite area just because of the thematic, the theme of the whole area. It's a power down wreckage. You'll see it in a bit. Actually, the Metroid lore is, it's quite simple, but in addition to that, it's kind of interesting. I might do some videos on it actually later, but for now I'll be doing guides. Alright, so we'll swing across here. I'll speed this up a bit. You need to be careful because the water will actually slow you down now, but in the wrecked ship we'll be getting an item that will let us move freely through water and lava as well. Extremely handy. There are also some sort of phantom in here. You'll see the phantom spawning right there. It'll spawn different places, but you'll be able to shoot it. Now I mistook that place for the hidden path, but the hidden path is actually down here. To the left here, there are spikes and if you notice, you can see that the whole area is kind of shut down because it's of course a wrecked ship, so not everything is working. But eventually, we'll be able to turn the power back on. The door down there to the left is actually turned off. Once the power is back on, of course the door will open as well. I like that mechanic. I think it's the way certain games shows you different areas, and once you do something later in the game, you'll be able to shed some new light over the old areas, and I really enjoy that in both movies and games, of course. You can see there's an eye enemy on the door here, so once we defeat that guy, we'll be at the boss. The boss has I guess the name is kind of lazy. You'll see in a bit. The boss is actually quite hard, at least I thought so. Well, if not hard, it's annoying. You'll see why. Oh, this guy likes fire. I don't like fire. His name is Phantoon, but he's not, a character on in a comic or a toon. He is a phantom with a big eye. Now he opens his eyes and you have to shoot it with a missile as fast as possible while still avoiding the fire. Once the fire reaches once it bounces once, you'll be able to shoot it and you can get more missiles. I'm not sure if you can get health drops or energy drops, but they're not that difficult to avoid, and once they fall down you can start shooting them. Now I'd recommend using the super missile at first. Try hitting him in the eye because it does so much damage if you want a quick process. I'll fast forward a bit just so you can see he starts to get red when he's at low health. He'll also move a lot faster when he's in low health, so be careful. He's a dangerous guy. Now this boss is actually one of the least interesting bosses. I think there are a couple of bosses who are pretty useless in this game, and there are a couple who are really interesting. Like the last boss is quite great, and third to last boss is I think we're gonna do him third to last. He's amazing. When bosses actually use the game mechanics in a great way, which, you know, shows you how to manipulate a mechanic of the game in a way to defeat the boss, and not just shooting at it for an endless amount of time. That's a great way to show off a boss. Now, as you can see, once we defeat the boss, the power turns back on, and we'll be able to get by different areas that were previously closed off. There are also machinery on the boat, on the ship. The boat will start actually working again, so be careful. There are a lot more enemies here now, and there are certain sparkling, electrical outlets and stuff like that that are dangerous. So keep avoiding those. I'm not really sure what those molecules, giant parts are. Just be careful, alright? You'll be fine. Don't worry. You'll do great. We're actually heading back up to the largest part of the ship. And this time we'll go through the door that was previously closed off. We effectively doubled our amount of super missiles, which is great. Now there's a secret hole here. We could have gone through here previously, but the door would have been closed, so that would have been, not entirely necessary. These enemies here, you can blow them off with missiles. They are quite annoying, so be careful and do that as fast as possible, I'd recommend. You can also see that there's a treadmill down here at the bottom, so be careful. Those big eyes there, the robots who look like mailboxes, they won't hurt us at all. I recommend using a super bomb here, just so you're able to see all the different paths here. I'm gonna speed forward here. You have to wait for the path, and you can jump up there, and you get some items back here. Now, these items, you'll get a super missile, another one. There are many super missiles in the wrecked ship. There's probably a reason for that. I mean, mechanically, game developers really enjoy putting items in places where they're not necessarily a logical reason for them to be there. Like a super missile that can be used by Samus is somehow inside a cave beneath a ruin that was long ago forgotten, and the same kind of missile is also located in a different part of the world, and they of course utilize the same kind of power and structure and everything, so logic doesn't necessarily apply here. Now this room is of course closed off until you defeat all the enemies. Now once you've defeated all the enemies, we're going to go through the door on the right side to get another missile pack. But in this case, this is a wrecked ship. There are probable reasons for there to be missiles here and weaponry and stuff like that. In this room, this is really annoying. You have to keep shooting those guys until they fall down and become pathways for you. Not really difficult, but same as Crocomire, they take a lot of time. Needless time usage, and it feels like padding of sorts. Now the enemies, of course, are respawned. They won't trouble you much though. Just be careful not to take too much damage, because of course you need energy. Outside here we'll be doing some rough platforming. You have to be precise. Not in the beginning, but there will be those green moving platforms, which we saw earlier in Norfair. And This time they require a bit more precision when you jump. Now, when I first started playing Metroid, at least the first Metroid, I had really trouble distinguishing between the spin jump and the regular jump. Now, the way you do a spin jump is by pressing to the sides while you jump. As you can see there, I just jumped straight up and I didn't do a spin jump. Especially later when you get certain combinations for your jumps. There's a missile right there. You get certain combinations that are additions to your jump. For example, the famous screw attack. Now, when you get those items, it's a lot more important for you to actually use the spin jump. But sometimes the spin jumps affect the way your precision when you're jumping. And I don't know, I enjoy games that have precise controls, and sometimes when you're doing a spin jump, Samus will do a regular jump instead. That might be the way I controlled in Samus in the game, but I find it difficult to predict what kind of jump she's gonna do. It's better in Super Metroid, but in Metroid 1 it was really difficult for me. And part of Metroid 2 as well, when you get another item we'll be seeing in this game as well. Alright. Through here, there's a hidden pathway. This one leads us back to the wrecked ship. You can spend some time here getting back your missiles if you're low energy. I always did this too much this playthrough. If I didn't, I would have gotten the best ending, but don't worry about it, you'll do just fine. Just remember, don't waste too much time farming health. You can just easily get it back later. Just be careful if there's a boss coming up, you might want to do it, but in my case this time, it was entirely unnecessary. We enter a room filled with spikes. There's a really cool mechanic here actually, that requires you to have paid attention to the statues earlier in the game. You see, all the statues held an item which was encased in a tube. Or in the ball, a sphere kind of thing. So if you turn into a sphere, whilst on the statue here, Chozo, and it will remove the spikes and it will give you access to a different area of the wrecked ship. Up next there will be an item, and that item is the one I talked about before we got to the wrecked ship, and that is a new suit, or an addition to our old suit, in case in this game. That is the gravity suit. Now the gravity suit, it allows us to easily travel beneath water and through lava. And we needed that because in Norfair there were certain areas filled with lava that we were unable to cross earlier. Now we're back in another room where they keep using this mechanic here, where you have to shoot these guys down into the spike holes. This one, fortunately, isn't as hard because there aren't any thread mills going in the different directions here. And we get another missile pack now. We're a bit over halfway there on the missiles. We're still far from halfway when it comes to the other items, but the end of the game is filled with power-ups, so don't worry. Now here we're gonna try another Shine Spark. You have to Shine Spark up there at the end. You'll be able to get another item, a reserve tank number 2. Now, as I said earlier, the Shine Spark is, well, it's difficult technique, but it's a very useful one if if you are able to do it, but it's not necessary to complete the game. But to complete the game 100%, you have to use the Shine Spark, or you have to backtrack a lot later in the game when you get certain upgrades. And that takes a lot of time, so I'd recommend trying to master the Shine Spark early. Now, as you can see, the gravity suits make us able to move freely underwater, and we'll be able to go through this secret passage here and get another missile pack. Now, as I talked about in the earlier games, in the earlier episode, I mentioned that I haven't played any other Metroid game. Now, before I started playing Metroid 1, obviously. But there are lots of games that I'd, love to play, but they feel kind of archaic. They feel older. They're classics in the eyes of many, but some of the mechanics might feel outdated. And there's a thing where a lot of people are afraid to go back to older games. I've heard some, amongst others, Giant Bomb, have talked about the way old games have their nostalgic value, and once you go back to the game, you lose that nostalgia. And some people are afraid of losing that feeling they had, the affection they had for the game. Now, if you're playing it for the first time, of course, it's a lot different. You don't have nostalgia because you have never played the game. But you'll judge the game in light of, newer games. And newer games are... Well, some people say that older games are a lot harder, but I would disagree. I would think a lot of new games are hard as well. But the thing is that new games are a lot more accessible, and accessibility is not the same thing as difficulty, which I think a lot of people tend to misinterpret or misunderstand. These old games aren't really accessible. They are not convenient. They have mechanics that have to be understood in a way that aren't intuitive. That means that they aren't apparent for the player instantly. There aren't any, a pop-up screen that tells me, you can use the X-ray thing to find the hidden items in the game, or there aren't any thing that tells me that you can use the grapple beam to actually hurt enemies. You have to find this out yourself, and this doesn't make the game any more difficult. If you knew that from the start, you'd have less trouble figuring it out. You would probably make the game easier to understand, but you wouldn't make it any less difficult, because you still have to, actually shoot the enemy with the grapple beam to test it out. The lack of this game has a proper map, but the previous games, they require you to use a manual with a map or a separate screen. There's a lot more effort going into the game than someone who would actually just sit down and play, a new game where they don't have to think about stuff like this. But there's still the question of why are we still playing classic games like this? In older games, some say they have nostalgic value. And some people feel they would like to share that feeling that they once had, and talk about. I get that feeling when I talk about the original Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, because that game has an extreme nostalgic value for me, and I would love everyone to have that same feeling. But at the same time, people who play that game for the first time now, they would probably not get that same feeling. It's not zealotry, but it's sort of forcing something onto others because your intentions are good. Another good point of why we play old games is because we want to see the history. We want to, at least I know I want to see the way things became like they are, because of course certain game mechanics and innovations didn't happen all by themselves. They had an origin, a history, and I think by playing older games, you know, you get an insight into what kind of thoughts and what mechanics were like before these innovations, and what influence did they infer on others and later mechanics and other games. And I think that's awesome. Like this game, for example, Super Metroid, it has a map, it has an open world, and today the games like GTA or Red Dead Redemption or Saints Row, Assassin's Creed, those are open world games with maps. Of course, they have maps. Far Cry has maps. It used to be a quintessential part of something that came and gave you additional information. But now it's just normal. It's always there. I haven't played a game lately that doesn't have a map or a way of navigating the world, the current world. What I'm trying to say is that Metroid was kind of pioneering maps in a game. I can't remember if the Final Fantasy games had maps, the first ones. That would be interesting. I think they did. Yeah, I think they did. But in this case, Metroids were Super Metroid is a side-scroller, and it still has a map, which the map is of course in 2 dimensions. But a map is always in 2 dimension. Gives you a coordinate of X and Y. Sometimes the map is 3D, and it gives you a Z coordinate. But nowadays maps are most common in 3D games. It's quite interesting. Oh well, I should stop talking about maps. Probably boring you to hell. We're gonna take this tube here all the way to the bottom. Now, we've been in Meridia. Now, Meridia used to be or is currently a place where a science facility where the space pirates did experiments on the Metroid that they kidnapped that Ridley took. And they have been creating, as you can see here, these are faulty Metroid experiments. So this place is filled with failed experiments. They couldn't replicate a Metroid. Why would the space pirates try to make a Metroid? Was it because of the energy, creating potentials of the game? Not really sure. Of the game, sorry, of the Metroid. Yeah, well, we get another part of the map here. Ugh, I wonder how many times I've said map in this episode. Oh well. Well, back to retro games now, or older games. I would like to play more old games. I've made a backloggery for myself. I've decided to, put up all the games that I want to play, and I haven't put an order to them yet, but I want to get through all the classics. And by classics, I mean the games that everyone is talking about. So there's it's based on, social popularity, and the Metroidvania genre is a genre that I've never really gotten into, and Metroid is half the part of that name of the genre, so I wanted to get back to the basics. Now, I'm not really a big fan of side-scrollers or 2D platformers. 2D games in general, I feel that sometimes it's the way that the game is laid out is quite immersion breaking for me. Earlier, you know, back in the 90s and 80s and even before that, games were 2D because that was the most appropriate way to display the media. Now here we have to do a difficult shine spark here. You have to use the shine spark and go through the door and jump up. So just watch the screen and I'll show you. Use the shine spark on the flower to the left there. I missed by you know, a small measure, so I'm gonna show you once again how to do it. There's a missile on top, so that will get, so it's worth it. That's the third shine spark. Where was I? Right. Games I'd like to play. I like to play the earliest GTA games, the ones on the PS1. I'd also like to play. I'd like to play the Advance Wars games because I love Fire Emblem. I love strategy games in general. SRPGs are amazing. I'd love to play the. I haven't played Final Fantasy Tactics since the best one. I need to play through that, and Disgaea 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, I guess it's called D2. I'm gonna show you something here. This is a hidden path just below where that crawler is. Just roll along the sides there in through the hole. You'll find another super missile upgrade, which is useful and, you know, beneficial. Yeah, I'll come up with more games as I go along later. Now, I've always thought that Samus looks amazing. Her design is so cool. She looks. Of course, when I was a child, I thought Samus was a robot. Actually, people always were surprised by the fact that she was a woman. And it was, of course, like wow when that reveal happened at the end of the NES game, and I think it's really, really good that Samus is a woman. But I thought she was a robot actually, because she's so I guess monotonous in her moves because of the suit. But she's a bounty hunter, and she has a gun on her hand, and I always thought that, ooh, that gun was so awesome. It was like, it reminded me of Buzz Lightyear in Toy Story, with you were able to shoot lasers from your hand. It was so cool. But of course now I realize that there's a lot more to Samus than I previously thought. That the way the suit is constructed is really cool. With the way I have no idea how she can turn into a ball, but it must hurt her anatomically. It looks so painful. There's probably not a good explanation for why she can turn into a morph ball. But the suit is constructed in such a great way. It has those pauldrons on the side. It's, you know, quite 80s. It looks eerily inspired by other, you know, mech suits. Probably inspired by anime and probably Star Wars. I also read that Metroid is influenced by the Alien franchise, which is cool. Here we got a couple of missiles, super missile and a missile, regular one. That's useful. This room doesn't have any other benefits though, so I'm trying to do a wall jump here, and I'm failing miserably because of the thing I said earlier with the spin jump that I'm having difficulty with performing. Alright. We're still in Meridia here, so we're still in the underneath the big lake outside of the wrecked ship. Now, geographically, the world is actually constructed in a really cool way when you have the kind of the areas and the kind of deserted, you know, empty criteria area. Criteria area. Say that 10 times. Outside, and then you have Norfair, which is insidious, dangerous, and creepy at the bottom, and then you have Brinstar, which is like the middle ground with the infested or the dense forests and thorns and stuff like that, which is. Now, what do you guys think about forests in games? I'm not really sure how to feel about forests. I mean, some forests are really cool, like the Forest Temple in Zelda, and what other forest areas are great? I love the forest areas in Dark Souls. Those are great. Because they give the feeling of like sorrow, and sometimes of serenity, because the forests are like their own creature and they have their own they are, even in worlds that are desperate and in trouble, the forests are always like the constant in the variable way the game works. But forests can be quite dull. They can be boring, and I don't know. People talk about sewer levels being boring. I think that forest levels are, you know, with mushrooms and flowers and poison. I always hate poison in game because poison. Why do people put poison in their games? I have no idea. Because poison, it's. When you die in games, you get annoyed, right? It's supposed to give you an incentive to try again. The thing that poison does, at least in most games, is that it gives you an ailment that takes down your health over time, which basically it extends your I guess it limits your time, the time you have. Oh, boss. Well, this boss is really simple. His name is Botwoon, and he's a giant snake. It's not Volvagia. He shoots poison beams, or poison, bolts. Just have to wait for him to come out and shoot him with a super missile, and he'll take a lot of damage. He'll turn red and go faster and faster until the end. And eventually you will burn him down, like there. And now Botwoon is down, and we'll continue on. But that's it for today. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'll see you guys in the next episode. Take care.